With the holidays almost here, you don't have time to go to the post office. Traffic, parking, it's going to be packed with everyone mailing holiday gifts and packages. Do what I do. Stay at home with Stamps.com. Stamps.com, you can avoid all the hassle of going to the post office during the busy holiday season. Everything you would do with the post office, you can do right from your own desk using your own computer and your own printer. You can print official U.S. postage, too. Print postage for any letter or package the instant you need it. Then the mailman just picks it up. Easy, convenient. I use Stamps.com. You should, too. Right now, get this special offer when you use my last name, Mohr, M-O-H-R, no-risk trial. $110 bonus offer that includes a digital scale and up to $55 free postage. Don't wait. Go to Stamps.com before you do anything else. Click on the microphone at the top of the homepage and type in my last name, Mohr. Stamps.com. Enter Mohr.
Geico presents Fan Mail to a Pig.
Dear Maxwell, first off, hope you are well. And I am. Seems like all you do is promote Geico's web and app abilities. And while I really enjoyed your last commercial where you talked about how I could take a photo of my VIN number and add it to my account all via my Geico app, I've got to think it doesn't leave you much time for anything else. Do tell. Sincerely, Miranda Morgan. Well, Miranda, thank you for asking. And this Geico spokespig does have time to do other things. For instance, I do a lot of
VIN scanning to add a car, just a tap away on the Geico app.
Put your name on it. Just put your name on it. That's all I say. Be a man or a woman. Put your name on it.
Well, I'd like to hear about it, potheads.
How the fuck you gonna know how to be great if you don't study greatness? Look at the game change.
Donuts.
If you want a battle, it's either that you will or you won't.
You know, you're not a bad-looking man, Mr. Gals.
But you are, Blanche. You are in that chair.
There's something wrong with us. Something very, very wrong with us.
Hey, man.
Yo, turn my headsets up. Joe Perry on the More Stories podcast.
Rolling.
Joe Perry, you were talking about getting used to the weather here in beautiful Southern California.
Oh, I'm trying to. I mean, the first day I got here, when the book tour officially ended, there were a couple of nice hot days, you know, where you get 2 or 3 hours and the sun's blasting down and you get a little, tan. But now, along with it's actually making it easier to go in the studio. I've been in the studio for the last week or so. So I'm working on my studio tan, but it makes it a lot easier to get in the studio when the sun isn't, blaring down, because I just love being out in the sun. So,
and not a lot of sun at this time of year, like in Boston.
It's there, but you don't see it. I mean, there's clouds.
You're not going to get
crappy
tan
weather and stuff. But right about now, if all else being equal, I would probably be in Florida. But
Florida?
Even then, I mean, I guess they're getting some pretty cold weather down there.
It's cold all over.
Yeah.
But it's hot all over. If you read Rocks, the book by Joe Perry, My Life In and Out of Aerosmith, I wasn't able to read the whole thing. But when I was skimming through, I was like, I started making check marks on pages and like stories and things I wanted to ask you about. Fucking Steven Tyler auditioned for Led Zeppelin. I'm like, wait, what? Huh? Wait, there's like so much. Your band in particular, Aerosmith. There is so much. You want to talk about a band that took a dip, disintegrated, came back. Then when you guys came back, like getting rid of, switching out managers and all that stuff. The longevity of Aerosmith. Why? Not to ask like why, but seriously, out of all the bands that disintegrate and then they just say stay disintegrated, what is it about Aerosmith? Not only have you guys survived, but when you guys put songs out, there's never a dud. They are always great songs and they're always hits. It's like this magic potion you guys tapped into somehow after you disintegrated and came back like a phoenix rising from the ashes. It's you guys kind of can't lose. What is that? How do you quantify that?
I think a lot of it has to do with it's always been an uphill fight for us. I mean, we didn't like so-called make it overnight. I mean, we worked really hard building the sound of the band and then building a repertoire of songs that people wanted to hear. And but our main thing was knowing we had to get on stage and entertain the audience live. I mean, that was how you did it back then. And I mean, there were other bands doing the same thing, and you just wanted to, leave the show knowing that you left an impression. And that's always been our thing right up till right now. I mean, it's like part of our what makes us tick. I mean, it's about getting on stage and playing live, and through all the ups and downs of like punk and disco and the diva era and the boy band era and all that stuff. I mean, it still boils down to playing live, and we love doing that. And sounds like a cliche, man, but I'll tell you, when the five of us get on stage, we leave all the other crap behind, whether it's a screaming argument or we just had a great time having a lot of laughs. We get on stage and it's just us in the audience, and that's it.
So essentially, the longevity of Aerosmith is the fact that when you go see an Aerosmith concert, you never leave that concert feeling like you got shortchanged. You feel the opposite. You got to destroy live.
We try to do. I try to leave everything I got on stage, and I'll tell you, the more we go on, every year that goes by, I feel like I got to give more at every show. I mean, and we dig down. You can tell all the guys. None of us phone it in. It's just. I don't know. I don't know when the next Aerosmith gig is going to be. I really don't. I mean, in the middle of this last tour, Joey had a medical thing, and he had to go in and have heart surgery. And within 10 days, he was back on the drum throne, feeling like he was 10 years younger. But he just was out there having a great time. And but that's the kind of drive that the band has. So
it's got to be, I mean, people go like, hey, we're like a family. But when you've been around and been together for like 30, 40, however many years Aerosmith has been together, it is your family. You're probably with the band more than you're actually with like your wife, Billy. Like your actual family, for a very good chunk of time, takes a back seat to your on-stage family.
Well, one thing that when I met Billy before I put Aerosmith back together with the other guys, I mean, we made a commitment that we weren't going to be apart. So I've actually been able to spend probably more time with my wife and with my kids than most average people get to do. I mean, a lot of people, they have the 9-to-5 job. They get up early, the kids go to school, you get home, you're tired, everybody watches TV or whatever, and then the next day, as far as we go, we raised our kids on the road. We brought a tutor with us, and so I've actually spent a lot more time with my kids. And on the off days, we'll go off and do and wherever we are, we'll try and see something that we've never seen before, whether it's the Grand Canyon or the biggest ball of twine. You name it, we've been there.
There is actually a biggest ball of twine to look at.
Well, there's a couple. But we've been across the Everglades. We've the kids have been to Tokyo at least 6 or 7 times over their lives. And
how old are your kids?
Well, the youngest is 22, and he just graduated from BU. The oldest is 40, and he runs my food company. And my next youngest,
Joe Perry has a food company?
Yeah, it's called Joe Perry's Rock Your World, and we do table sauce and barbecue sauce. And then my third youngest is, he's his late 30s, and he's a lawyer. And he's married to a beautiful wife who's a lawyer, and they live in New York City, and they got a 2-year-old daughter, and so that makes me a grandfather. And then my 28-year-old son is a producer and an engineer, and he's got a song, 3 songs in a movie at Cannes right now, and he's been on there was that TV show. The one about the actors, the kids, I don't know.
You're asking the
Anyway,
wrong
they've
guy.
been
I
on.
don't know.
They've
A lot
had
of
some.
TV.
They've had some songs on some TV shows, and then and my youngest is a DJ, and he's into electric music and that kind of thing, but he wants to be he's into sound and electronic sound, so we'll see where that goes. But he just graduated from BU, so we'll see where that.
My grandfather used to tell me you can tell a lot about a man by his children. And for what you're telling me, Joe Perry, apparently you're a pretty fantastic man. You got all these successful kids, and now you got a grandkid running around. Well done, sir.
Well, thank you. And actually, I've heard the same thing, that you just want a window into a family. You watch how the kids behave. And so far, I've been really fortunate. And the kids are great, and I have a lot to thank Billy for, because she's an amazing woman, and she's been right there to help with the kids. So
when Aerosmith breaks up, and you just said out of your mouth, you said when I put Aerosmith back together, were you the one that was the man? Were you the guy that picked up the phone and called everybody and said, like, we need to get this back together?
Well, I suppose it was kind of. I mean, I remember making phone calls to Steven, but over the 4 or 5 years that I left the band, we'd always been talking to each other, and in fact, Brad played with my band a bunch of times. So to actually say who actually made the first phone call, I kind of tend to think it's me, but I know that once that phone call was made, it's kind of like a give and take thing. It took about 3 months for us to actually get.
Who was
get
the last
to the point.
domino to fall?
Say again?
Who was the last domino to fall? Who was the hardest guy to get to go, okay, I'm back in?
I think Brad.
Really?
Yeah. Well, he was very, very pragmatic about the whole thing.
And the nicest. I've met all you guys separately. When I was on Saturday Night Live, I met you guys, and what struck me about Brad was like he was one of the nicest guys I've ever met in my life.
He
like,
is
completely
he was
gregarious
nice about
and
it.
kind.
He was
we
really
just talked
nice
about AA
it.
for like an hour.
Yeah, and he's really a nice guy, but he just he had a good thing going, and outside of the band, but he wanted to make sure everything was solid, and he said, well, if you're going to make X amount of dollars a year, I'm in, and that was it. But
in the book Rocks that you wrote, Joe Perry's book is Rocks. Go get it. Christmas is coming, people. Make a run on this book because it is an awesome gift. And I got news for you, Joe Perry. This ain't no little book. This is a big-ass book. You put a lot of work into this.
Oh, yeah.
You talk about when the band got back together, you got a new manager, and the manager that agreed to bring you guys on board, one of his conditions was as long as all of you guys go to rehab. Well, I got to think, hearing that news, being in recovery myself, my first reaction would have been, go, fuck you, go to rehab. Do you want the band or not? We're Aerosmith. What's the matter?
If the timeline actually is that he managed my project for over a year before the thought of even going back to Aerosmith and putting that together was, actually happened. And we partied pretty hard together. I mean, that was one of the things that, I mean, he was younger, and we
you and the manager party.
We cranked down plenty of old Jack, and and we had our party
sorted out.
Sure, yeah. So it wasn't like it was all of a sudden, okay, let's all get straight. It was like it was a period of a couple of years before everything we got back together, and we were still partying. And during the summer that we toured with the Back in the Saddle tour without an album, and we just went on the strength of the band being away for 5 years as the original members. We were still trying to control it, but there's no controlling it, so to speak.
One of the dreaded C's.
And then it was kind of like, we had done a record, and it didn't really hit the mark, and and he was talking with somebody, and he said, "Well, you really got to get these guys, off that party thing, and get them kind of straight, and he had to deal with it first,
Yeah,
and then he got himself sober, and then he said to us, we got to do something different, and we knew it. I mean, I knew after doing some recording, and it just wasn't working the way we used to do it. I mean, we had burned out on all that stuff, so we had to figure out a new way to do it, and that was sober.
It might be, going back to the original question, maybe a bunch of guys in a band getting sober at the same time. Maybe that's the longevity, because and I know from being in recovery, like, it is in a way like being born again and seeing things for the first time, and that routine, that habit of, you're used to going to a studio wrecked or just getting the right amount of buzz before you do this, and you kind of time your high, you time your booze to hit certain times of your night and your evening, but
exactly.
Then you got to relearn just to show up and do it stone cold sober. Maybe that was the fact that all you guys got sober at the same time. That might have been the kick in the ass. That's why we're listening to the great Aerosmith we listen to every day.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. I think that I mean, between the figuring out, just for ourselves, because, again, you have to do it for yourself. And it took a couple of years for everybody to kind of get on board and realize that was the way to go. But could I play without doing anything? Could I, was it going to affect our fans? I know that I could hold up a bottle of Jack Daniels and get a cheer from the audience, I mean, so there was a lot of questions about whether or not to do it. But for our image, all that stuff. And then we figured, look, either take our music with us sober or take us burned out and barely able to make it. So, it was it got to be an easier choice the more we got into it, and we realized that hey, the fans just want to hear good music, and we realized the only way we could deliver it was to change our whole paradigm and forget about that, because that whole timing thing and all that worked for a little while, but at the end it just burns you out, and your creativity is just gone. And then you realize that, hey, the first time I heard rock and roll, I wasn't fucked up. I loved it because it was really, I loved it. It wasn't because I just drunk a bunch of Jack Daniels or smoked a joint or anything. It was all, I was sober when I first heard it and loved it and picked up the guitar and all that stuff. I mean, it wasn't until later that, I discovered that it kind of can add a little bit more to it or whatever. But then, sure enough, farther down the road, if you take it too far, you're going to fall off the end.
Well, I thought Back in the Saddle was the first sober Aerosmith album, but I didn't know. You just told me it wasn't. What was the actual first album where everybody was sober and everybody had their act together?
Permanent Vacation.
Okay, so when you're in the studio and the first time you're hearing playback on Permanent Vacation, I'm assuming you probably have like knots in your stomach because it's the first time you've all jammed together sober, and so you don't know what's going to come back. You might come back sounding like dog shit, but when you finally heard that, you guys, was there like an angst to like, how is this going to sound?
Well, I think that because we had spent enough time working on the record, and we already had made a record where we weren't straight, Done with Mirrors, appropriately named, but that the lack of success on that from a personal point of view, and also from the fans weren't jumping up and down about that record. I mean, so we already had, okay, this is how you do it the old way. And then when Permanent Vacation, when we were listening back to that, it was like music to our ears. So,
do you think that actually helped your sobriety in the long run? With like, it was almost like an affirmation of like, I'm a really great musician without anything in my system other than the fire that is, like you said, the first time you heard that record. What was that record, Joe Perry, that you heard back when you were a child that made you go, holy shit, I got to be a part of this? What was that sound?
Well, as far as just playing music, it was there was like the Roy Orbison, that era, the early 60s, late 50s, just hearing music, bits and pieces of it. Really wasn't much music around the house at all. So it was what I heard on the radio, and there was something about it that just grabbed me. And then as time went on, and I heard the Beatles, and then I went to see a couple of rock and roll shows. I actually got to see the Dave Clark Five play live.
Wow.
I missed the Beatles and the Stones and that first era, but it was one of the last tours that they played, and I got to see that kind of the last of the English invasion, so to speak, of that English invasion, and the whole thing just kept. The more I got to see, and the more I felt like, not only do I like this, but I think I can do something with it. I never thought that it would obviously turn into a 40-year career, but I certainly thought that we could make a living at it, and I wouldn't have to wash dishes.
If you could play with any living person, you get a call today on your cell phone when you leave here. They're at they're at the Roxy tonight. Any living human being, who's the one person, no matter what else you had on your schedule, you would drop everything just to play with that person?
Bob Dylan.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Have you played with Dylan before?
No.
It just seems like he played with everybody, except you.
Well, I haven't met him. There's a lot of there's a perception.
You don't strike me as
there.
a Dylan guy. That's amazing.
There's a perception that whatever business you're in, you kind of feel like everybody must know everybody else. And the first thing you learn is you don't. Whatever. As soon as you get into that, whatever part of showbiz you're in, or whatever sports or any kind of thing where there's like that kind of common clan or whatever. It's like, you run into some people, and there's other people you may never get a chance to run into. And, it's just been one of those things. I've never had a chance to meet them. So,
what 3 songs, if you could pick the playlist for, you're playing 3 songs with Bob Dylan live, which 3 would you pick?
Oh, I'd have to say, like a Rolling Stone, and, let me see.
If I gave you a guitar right now,
To Let Me Feel Your Love is one that's another one, and also there's one that he did, Broke Down Engine, which is an old blues song that he did, and I've actually we almost put it on Honkin' on Bobo, but it didn't make it. But
so if I put a guitar in your hands, you could bang out all those 3 songs, no problem.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
But I'd like to play something that I hadn't heard before. That would make it more interesting.
Play something off of Oh Mercy. For some reason, nobody took a swipe at Oh Mercy. It's my favorite Dylan album.
Yeah.
Most of the time, one of the greatest love songs of all time.
I mean, he's written some incredible stuff. I mean,
anyway, Time Out of Mind, late, like coming in at 70 years old and just tossing us Time Out of Mind. You go, really?
And people talk about autobiographies. The Chronicles one. I mean, that's one of the best books I've ever written. Period. I mean, forget about autobiographies. I mean, it's just to hear him, write like that, and just and also just the what he went through and all that in the early days. It's amazing.
Well, we want people to buy your book, Rocks, Joe Perry, My Life In and Out of Aerosmith. I'm sponsored by Amazon, Joe Perry, so here's what people need to do. Instead of going to Amazon, you go to my website, jmohr.com, click the Amazon banner, and then you can go buy Rocks by Joe Perry, My Life In and Out of Aerosmith. Basically, Amazon just wants to know that you got there through my website. And then if you use the Amazon banner at jmohr.com, I'll read what you bought on this podcast. Like, look at this guy, Joe Perry. John M. J. Moors. That's what people call me, because that's what Tracy Morgan used to call me. Yeah, what's up, J. Moors? Yeah. I'm here with Joe Perry from Aerosmith. J. Moors, I just used the Amazon banner on jmohr.com to buy a 5-pound bag of coffee from Coffee Bean Direct. I recently quit drinking. Coffee hits the spot. The past few days without alcohol, my body's been saying, hey, man, where's the booze? I just signed up for Amazon Prime. That's why I'll be using your site to shop Amazon all the time. Take care, JJ. You are an inspiration. John M. I don't know about being an inspiration, John M., but I try to work hard for a living. Why don't you blow this guy's mind? Just say, hi, John. It's Joe Perry.
Hey, John. It's Joe Perry.
John.
Are we live?
No, but he'll get it.
Okay.
It's some people are like a year behind. They'll be like, "Yeah, just listen to your podcast with Charlie Sheen." I'm like, that was in 2011. What?
Okay.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Jason Ray noticed a blue birthmark had appeared on his forehead in the shape of the Geico gecko. Jason felt compelled to switch his car insurance to Geico and save hundreds of dollars with great discounts. By nightfall, the birthmark had disappeared. Jason's wife, Jeannie, thinks it was probably just blueberry jam from breakfast. Jason prefers to believe otherwise.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Want to add more excitement behind the wheel? Choose Shell V-Power Premium Gasoline and experience a drive that comes alive. Shell V-Power removes an average of 60% of performance-robbing gunk on intake valves left by low-quality premium gasolines, and it starts with your very first tank. And now you can save big on Shell fuels. Just sign up free for the Fuel Rewards Network program and receive at least 3 cents per gallon instantly on every fill-up. For full offer and details, visit fuelrewards.com. Shell V-Power Premium.
Joe Perry Project, great albums. This confounds me about lead guitarists. Like when I listen to Keith Richards, Talk Is Cheap, and when I listen to Ron Wood, Give Me Some Neck, and Izzy Stradlin, Juju, I forget the name of the album, or if I listen to the Joe Perry Project, they're fantastic albums. But for some reason, I think there's a stigma attached to lead guitarist doing like his solo project, and I don't think you guys get nearly the recognition, the run, and certainly not the sales that I think you deserve, because all these albums that I've just said are like, they're not good, they're great. Like, they're great albums.
Oh, thanks.
You being Joe Perry, when you put out a Joe Perry Project album, and if it, I mean, it's obviously not selling like an Aerosmith album, is there a part of you that takes it personally where you're at home going like, bro, this is fucking great, what's wrong with everybody?
Well, especially the first one, but again, there's I spell it out pretty clearly in the book. There's actually been no real interest in seeing me have any success outside of Aerosmith, because what would happen if I left again, you know? And there's always been this kind of undercurrent that I've felt, and I know from our managers from the 70s that they were very. First of all, they didn't really believe that I mattered that much to the band, and so when I left, they basically said, "Well, it's not going to make much difference." You know,
yikes!
And then, of course, we had to take that back after,
just
a few years later. But, there's always been this feeling.
Joe Perry left. Whatevs.
Literally said, we want him back. We want him to come back to Aerosmith. So don't do anything to help his solo career.
Really? So you were sabotaged a bit?
Well, it was. When the record came out, I get very little push from the record company.
But I would think now, especially with the age of like the digital download, if you did something solo, I don't think it would be possible to really sabotage it. Is there another Joe Perry solo album in the works? Are you working on anything?
I'm always writing. I've always been. It's really been backwards. I mean, most people have their major creative period when they first get started and all, but it's just seemed to be the other way, and I'm more prolific now than I've ever been, and I'm always in the studio. I'm working on stuff right now. In fact, I have every evening about 5 o'clock when I'm done with the phoners and all this stuff, I'm in the studio. So
for solo stuff.
Yeah. I mean, and then, whatever comes out of it, sometimes it may be something I'll save for Aerosmith, but recently I kind of finish the stuff myself and then see where it goes. You know, because I like to write lyrics and I like to and some of the lyrics most of them are very personal, and I like to sing them. You know?
Yeah, when you do like Joe Perry project and you are sort of sandbagged by the record company, it sounds to me like, as a fan of you and a fan of both Joe Perry project stuff that you do on your own and a fan of Aerosmith, it sounds almost like it must be a walk of shame to go back to the band. Like, was there ever any, like, did people get shitty on you? Like, Steven or, you know, anybody go like, how'd that work out for you? Like,
no, not at all. I mean, most of them are like, in fact, when the Red record came out, the Joe Perry record, we played some songs off of that, you know, because I usually sing a couple songs during the show.
Yeah.
And
not to interrupt you, you're one of the few guys. You and Keith are one of the only two. I think the only two guitarists. When it's their turn to sing, everybody doesn't just run to the bathrooms. Like, if you're doing something off the Red record, like, I'm staying put because I dig it. And if Keith's going to sing Happy and Walk Before They Make Me Run, anybody going to the bathroom, you go like, okay, they're not real fans. They're idiots. They're idiots.
Right.
They don't know what's up.
Hey, man, you know, it's just how it is. And it's tough being next to one of the best singers, arguably.
And
you know, so
one of the greatest frontmen ever. Yeah.
And then there's like the majority of the people are there to hear the hits. You know, the Steven song and whatever. You know, I mean, I've been nominated for instrumentals, and I have gotten some critical credit for, you know, a lot of the stuff I've put out, and I do have, you know, some hardcore fans out there that let me know that. But, you know, again, compared to what Aerosmith does, it's a big machine. You know, so. You know, when you have so many people with so much interest in keeping the band together, you know, every time we go out on the road, there's a lot of cash involved. So,
yeah.
You know, I don't even know if it's, I mean, I just expect it to be what it is. I mean, I'm not, you know, I don't sit there and go, well, I gotta have at least 3 songs that are potential singles or whatever. I just go down and write songs, you know. And if I want to write a love song, I write a love song. If I want to write a ballad, I write a ballad. If I want to write a kick-ass rock song, I write it. It doesn't. I'm not thinking about commercial, you know. And
right.
I mean, obviously, I wanted to have a standard, you know, of. You know, and have it be the best I can do, but or else again, what's the point of doing it? But I'm always pushing myself, and I think that it helps when I go back to write with Aerosmith, because I've learned more, you know, more about writing and the whole thing. So, you know, I look at it as a positive thing, and whether I sell 25 records, 25,000, whatever, you know, and they're permanent. They're out there forever. They're like the book. The book is out there. My grandkids are going to be reading it just the way they're going to be listening to my solo records. So, yep, that was Granddad, and that's what he did, you know.
Who makes the set list, and how much time go? Because I get a little set list obsessed when one of my bands that I dig are on tour and how it changes night to night.
Yeah.
Like, who's out of all of you guys? Is there like a driving force, or is it just agreed that we're going to close with X, we're going to open with Y? Like, who?
Well, we usually start the tour off with a kind of an idea of what the set's going to be, you know, and then we usually practice 10 or 15 more songs we might not have usually played, and then that kind of gets morphed into Joey likes to put a set together, and then we have something to work from. And then
you let the drummer do the set list, man?
Well, he just, you know, he sits back and he has, like he says, he has the best seat in the house. He gets to watch the audience reaction to the songs. So
that's a good point.
So, you know, he comes up with a set that he feels like is going to carry the day. And then
what's his batting average?
And then
what's Joey's batting average? Putting together a set list.
Well, the point is we start from there, and then we kind of like pick out the ones we know we got to play, and we all agree on, and then it's a battle. And usually our road manager, one of our guys, John Bianelli, will take the set list and go from dressing room to dressing room. And then, he'll come to my room and I'll go, well, I'd really like to do this one, and then he'll take that to Joey's room. And then Joey will either put an X or a Y next to it, and then it goes to Tom's room, and he goes around, And
this is crazy.
It's like,
this is great.
But you know what? He did that for a while, and then he said, listen, let's just go to Steven's room and get it done all at once. Because, it gets kind of boring running from room to room and trying to get, have this
one X and Y at a time.
You know what I mean? And so usually the three of us will get together at some point, whether it's me and Steven and Joey or, of course, Steven's vote carries a little more weight because it depends on how his throat's feeling.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's probably some songs that you go, hey, we open up with this, we're up and running, and Steven might go, I can't sing that early, I got to warm up.
Yeah, definitely. There are times when he'll say, well, I can do that one, but I got to do a little later in the set.
This shit fascinates me.
There are a couple of songs that I have to play. Well, there's one song I have to play 6-string bass. We mentioned it before, Back in the Saddle. And that's a bitch. I mean, sometimes it's it's taken its toll on my hands over the years. I mean, I'm not a bass player, so
why doesn't Brad
sometimes play? I've got to say, well, I'm not, especially if it's outdoors and it's cold.
Well, why doesn't Brad play it?
The 6-string bass.
Yeah,
it's just he plays. Actually, what he does is he plays the solo that I played on the record. So
right on,
because I played the bass on the 6-string bass and the solo on Back in the Saddle. So he does my part there, and I play the bass. So
have you ever asked him to switch off because it's killing your hands?
Well, it's hey, no one wants it. No guitar player wants to play the 6-string bass, and because it's a pain.
Why not let the bassist play the 6-string bass?
Well, because it's a different sound.
I know.
And it's you got to bend those fucking strings, and they're heavy, and it's a pain, and so especially outdoors, so all those factors go into making the set list.
Every time I see a band live, I always try to go 2 or 3 nights, and there's always like in the middle. There's maybe 4 songs in the whole show. There's like 4 songs each night that are switched in and out, and I'm always because the night before I saw the show and it was incredible, and then all of a sudden you're doing something from Toys in the Attic that I've never even heard live before, and I'm going, what? Like, first of all, hey, that's ballsy because I thought that's like kind of a deep cut. Like who? It seems odd to me. It's almost like switching horses in the middle of the race, and I think the general fan thinks that once you make that set list, you're just up and running for 6 months. That's the set list. Why do things get switched in and out? But then they do get put back in. So I'm curious as to why, like, some songs on Tuesday night weren't there on Sunday night, and then they get put back in on Thursday. Do you know? Does that make sense?
Well, because sometimes they're songs that we want to play because they're fun to play, and other times it's a what do they call it when the quarterback makes the call? I mean,
audible, yeah.
I mean, a lot of times I'll just start playing a riff, and I'll look around, and if Steven says, all right, or one of the other guys, follows in, we'll play it. I mean, a couple of shows before the end, I started playing Moving Out, and then right after Moving Out, Joey went right into Walking the Dog, which is the song right after that on the record. So it just kind of was one of those things. I mean, there was no curfew, and I figured, what the fuck, let's play it. And that's pretty much it. I mean, arguably, I got he's got the microphone, but I got a loud guitar too, so I can kind of
what's louder,
suggest it.
Steven screaming or you on an open G?
God, it depends on what we're playing. I mean, if he's rapping to the audience, they're going to be listening to that. But if I start the chords to again, Walk This Way or Chip Away at the Stone, that's a pretty big statement, and it's kind of hard to back away from that with the audience cheering.
Yeah.
I
saw you guys, I don't remember the album, and you're going to have to help me, and I apologize. Joe Perry, the book is Rocks. Go to the Amazon banner at jmohr.com, or just buy it because it's awesome and it's great, and it's the kind of rock and roll insight that you want. A lot of these guys, they write their biographies, their autobiographies, and it's like this corporate bullshit that they would sell at a record store. Joe, he really tells stuff that I was like, you really do pull the curtain back, warts and all, and I commend you for that. Which tour? So everybody, please go buy the book. Push this book for Christmas. Let's see how long we can keep Joey on the bestseller list. That'll be tight. And he's on Twitter at Joe Perry. So if you want to hit him up on Twitter and hashtag More Ears or More Stories or whatever, let him know that I sent you. I saw the tour when you guys were with Guns N' Roses. Which album was that? Because I can't remember off the top of my head.
Oh God, I can't remember either. It was I don't know, the end of.
Go ahead, Mama. Oh, that was Permanent Vacation in Pump? Okay. So here's the thing that I always wanted to know. When you guys started that tour, you had the #1 album in the country, and Guns N' Roses was like, they were Guns N' Roses. They were still a powerhouse, but you guys had like the #1 album. But then you guys kind of flip-flopped on the charts.
Yeah.
So that's got to be kind of a weird dynamic when the band opening for you all of a sudden shoots up the charts and passes you.
Well, it was great to watch them go through that, coming from, because the buzz was on already about the band.
But be honest, did they become like, Axl's not known as a sweetie. Were they kind of like dicks after that, or were they?
Well, actually, they were really together for that tour. I mean, I think they were only late one show. They were half an hour late, and I know they had one argument or something, but all in all, as far as an opening act, they were great. They put on a good show for the crowd, but they already had the buzz on. You know what I mean? And they were the new big thing. And we'd seen so many new big things go by that it was kind of like, yeah, I can stand back and go, oh God, well, here's this other band, and they even say that they're influenced by us, and here they are, selling more records than us by the end of the tour. But standing back and having so many years in the business, it was kind of. I just remember what it was like when we had that change, when we went from playing clubs where we're the only people with the people your friends that you called up, come on down, we're playing tonight, could you come up to the show? And then you kind of move into that place where it doesn't feel like you're pushing rope uphill. Right. People are coming to the show because they like your band, and that's a special feeling that you can't. It never feels like that again. And to watch Guns N' Roses go through that, it was like that summer they exploded, and to watch that happen was great. As far as Aerosmith, it's kind of like. Just like with the Run DMC thing. We did that for the fun of it, and we didn't know where it was going to go, and we were touring, putting out records. We're going to do what we're going to do. It just happened to be one of those things that really made a big impression and helped us out, but. We didn't really plan it that way. Nobody from the record company planned it that way. It was just an idea that
everybody thought it'd be like a good gag.
Had,
MTV, Aerosmith, Run DMC, it'll be hilarious. And it's all of a sudden the money starts rolling in for the record company, and you go, "Oh, this isn't hilarious at all. This is big business."
This is
now we got to take these three guys on tour with us.
Well, it turned out that also a lot of musicians decided that having. That kind of funk and that kind of feel with some electric guitars on it was a pretty good thing. It almost started another genre,
Yeah.
But we really
you guys had the funk from the beginning.
Didn't know where it was going to go from there. In fact, we didn't know if it was even going on the record, because they didn't want guitars on it. I mean, they had their own thing. They were doing rap. I mean, they had a new thing going. It was their thing. And when Rick said, well, maybe we should put some guitars on there, and they weren't like jumping up and down, going yay. You know what I mean? It was like, we hung out in the studio, and Rick was pushing it, and we had fun doing it. And he said, look, I don't know if we're going to put it on the record. We'll have to talk about it some more. But sure enough, 3 weeks later, we got a phone call, and they said, do you want to be in the video? It's going to go on the record. And it turned out to be a big deal.
Yeah, a real big deal. Has there ever been a band that was actually hard to follow?
Yeah, we had a couple of, again, I talk about it in the book. There was a couple of instances where we got nailed fair and square. There was one, in fact, there's a thing about it in classic rock, I think, about Rory Gallagher, who's not with us anymore. He was a great guitar player, Irish, hard drinking, hard playing blues rock guitar player, and we played with him at I think it was in Central Park, one of the outdoor gigs, and he opened for us, and the audience just wouldn't let him off the stage. He was rocking, and he just kept building the show, and hey man, they blew it. He blew us off the stage that night.
What year was that?
Probably in the mid 70s. I mean, mid to late 70s, and there was just something about his. He had a real solid following in New York, and it was one of those big festivals, and he just was on. He was on that night, man. And
I love how you put it, though, Joe.
And we were just getting.
He nailed us
there,
fair and square. I love how you just put it like straight up. Couldn't follow him, or you followed him, but it was tough. Yeah. And how is it like one verse into the first song where you realize, we're in trouble, or is it like halfway through the set? Like when do you realize like
we couldn't? We were still building our following in New York at that point. You know what I mean? It was. It may have been one of the first times we headlined a big show like that. I can't remember, but regardless, it was it was still like you get on stage, you do your best, and hopefully you come away with the audience remembering what you did. That night, I don't even know if they knew what songs he was playing. He just had the presence on stage. He was ripping it up on guitar, and the audience loved it, and we kind of went on, and it wasn't. We realized that the crowd wasn't as with us as we would have liked, and like I said, it was we got beat fair and square.
I love it. I just love the way you put it too. But what you said just now that I found really interesting.
Well, I'm going to jive and say, well, he was really good, and we did okay, and our audience was.
My pants were too tight, so I wasn't into it that night.
No. It was one of those times that the band was really good, man. And,
that's why
I deserved it.
Yeah, I brought it up because in the book, it's like you're just super honest in it, and you brought up Dylan, and we know now, and through this discussion so far, that you were always in the studio, you were always writing, you always like to write, you like doing lyrics, and obviously on guitar, you're peerless, like you're Joe Perry. I got to imagine there's got to be a little part of Joe Perry that would love to just kind of like, with the sunglasses and the hat, and just maybe get a Mustang convertible and just, without anybody else in the band knowing, just drive from like San Diego to Seattle and back, just go up and down the coast and do like, 150 seat rooms, maybe take a couple grand and just drive around like the old troubadour, hoofing it. Like that's.
I did that for almost 5 years with the project. I mean, that was pretty much it. I mean, we loaded up.
But you with the project. I'm saying just you, like you, because you said Dylan is why I brought it up.
Yeah.
Like you just go up, you can go acoustic, you can plug in, just like bars in Redondo Beach where they go, hey, there's a band coming out, and then it's fucking Joe Perry, and you can just do Dylan covers. You could do whatever you want.
Well,
like there's something about
fun.
that. It would, right?
You know, it's one of those things that would be. I could definitely do it. I mean, I've got enough stuff that I like to do, and you know, I've thought about even, you know, what it would sound like to just interpret some of the Aerosmith songs, you know, that Steven
but like
sings,
no
you know.
T-shirts, no
But
merch,
anything.
no like this Friday at the Malibu Inn. No, just everybody's eating their dinner, and you look up, and Joe Perry's on stage playing Masters of War.
Well, it would be a riot.
Just let me know if it happens, 'cause I
you
want
know?
to be there. Just let me know if it ever goes
think
down.
about that, because that's that. You know, I mean, I have a couple of months coming up.
You just got to let me know. Oh, look, Joe's got that look in his eye, like Malibu Inn ain't too bad. I can jump in the ocean when I'm done.
Yeah.
Steven really auditioned for Led Zeppelin?
Yeah, I guess that's what it said in the paper, and that's what Jimmy said. You know.
But is that what I mean? Does Steven tell you like I'm going to audition for Led
No,
Zeppelin,
no.
or does he keep it a secret? And does that
No.
harbor resentment at the time of like, bro, what are you doing? We got this thing going over here.
Well, that was the conversation 2 months later.
Yeah.
After we talked again. I mean, it was kind of like. Well, the thing is that we were writing for the new record, you know, and it was like I finally said, look, man, why don't we just go back and do it the way we used to, you know, just sit on the drums, play guitar, turn on a tape recorder, and we'll just see what happens. So after 5 hours of doing that on a Friday, and I said, well, what about, and he said, this was great, I had a great time, let's do it Monday. And I said, let's do it Monday. I'm always down here anyway. Come on. And he said, well, I'll call you tomorrow. And no phone call on Sunday. No phone call on
Steven
Tuesday.
said this. I'll call you.
Yeah.
Tomorrow. Okay.
And so I'm typical. You know, I mean, no phone call. And
Lead
then,
singer syndrome, man.
And then I asked one of the cats. It was and he said. Oh yeah, didn't you know he flew to England on Saturday to audition for Led Zeppelin? And it was like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? It was after, you know, I mean, he had to know when we were talking about writing again that he was going to London, but you know, I never really got into it with him as far as that goes. But bottom line was, he was off, and
but how weird is it he didn't pass his audition for Led Zeppelin? You could hold that over his head for the rest of the time.
The story is.
Joe, next time he wants to play with the set list, you go, we could have it your way, or you could just go, not get into Led Zeppelin again.
Well, believe me, that's I've used that plenty of times. I mean, come on. When I was writing the book, it was like, we'd be doing an interview, and if you started, going off a little, and tell him, hey, Steven, I'm writing a book right now, man, and or I'm looking through the pictures right now for the book, so watch what you.
Isn't it amazing that like Jimmy Page and Robert Plant just can't get their shit together? I mean, now they've played a couple gigs together, but like Jimmy Page would rather tour with the Black Crowes than even just get together with. I mean, you talk about a band disintegrating. Like those guys, they can't. I mean, Steven Tyler. What do you mean you don't know? Steven Tyler auditioned for Led Zeppelin. Robert Plant's alive.
They're English, man. They just don't talk. I mean, one thing I've noticed about English people is, and mostly, well, I know mostly musicians, but they just they're very reserved and they're very quiet about stuff. And at least Steven and I talk. I mean, there's like a good give and take, and I mean, we have good days and bad days and stuff. I mean, but I mean, when I talk to Jimmy about it, it's just they just don't talk. Literally. I mean, it's So it's kind of like I don't know what it is. I don't know what was in the past. Whatever. All I know is that they're really like. I mean, Stephen and I are like big time buddies compared to the way that Robert and Jimmy are. And,
but look, Stephen, I understand like the whole culture of the Brits not talking to each other and being staid and reserved, but I would think like Stephen leaving from Logan Airport to fly 7 hours to London to then get in a cab and drive on the wrong side of the street to get to a hotel and then to go to an audition. It's probably a lot more legwork than Jimmy going, Robert, would you like to record some more?
I suppose.
That's a lot of work to not talk to Robert Plant.
You know what? I just hear stuff secondhand, and
Joe does not want any part of the Zeppelin conversation.
I really, again, I don't want to pass on stuff that I don't know, that I wasn't sitting there for.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It's like you can tell by the book. It's like unless I was like kind of there, or I read it in the paper, or there was something to back it up. I mean,
but Stephen did.
Put words in other
I'm not going to lead you down
mouths.
any more Led Zeppelin alleys, but Stephen did indeed audition for Led Zeppelin.
This is true.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where were you when you found out that Stephen was on American Idol?
No,
did he call you and tell you he was going to do it?
No.
I know this is in the book, but
Right.
that's why I'm asking you
Right.
specifically.
No,
I don't want the listener to think I'm sabotaging you. Like, why is he fucking jumping all over Joe's shit? This is all very much in the
everything I'm
book.
telling you. There's
I know.
detail and
Yeah,
stuff
yeah.
in there
That's why I'm
too,
leading you down these roads.
But as far as that goes, I'm trying to remember. We were on the road, and somebody said something about Tyler's doing American Idol, and
I'm guessing your first reaction was, which song? Like, you know what I mean? He's like, what song will he do?
It was definitely he was picked as they wanted him to be a judge, because I'd been on the show 2 or 3 times before that, like backing up a couple of different singers just for the fun of it. You know what I mean? They asked me to play guitar with this one or that one, and so I'd been on the show before, but not asked to be a judge, which is a whole different.
It's a full time. That's a TV
thing,
gig, man, yeah.
And so anyway, I just found out somewhere on the road somebody had read it on the internet, and then there was I don't know, a couple of days went by. Finally, I just took him by the arm and went in the bathroom and said, "What's going on, man?" Which is how we deal with stuff. When shit really hits the fan, it's like I just throw everybody out of the dressing room and we just have a talk and see what's going on, and sort it out. And that's pretty much how we've been able to make it work.
Do you think he did it? I'm not asking you to speak on behalf of your brother, but was it just the check that you just can't turn down? Did he do it with being magnanimous, thinking like this will help the overall brand of Aerosmith? Were the guys in the band thinking this is going to take away from the brand of Aerosmith?
Well, I think that was, I think he's probably used every kind of justification for doing it. But the bottom line is, I think that it was. It was really custom made for the guy's personality. He's like outgoing. He loves the cheer from the audience. He loves being the center of attention. He loves all the press. He loves all that stuff, and he makes no bones about it. From the time he was 6 years old, he always wanted to be a big star and be a celebrity, and it was one of those things. It was like it was an empty chair there for that kind of a character, and it worked perfect for him. I mean, it was a good gig. We were happy for him after we got over the fact that we realized that the actual time he was going to be away from the band was actually pretty short. It was only a couple of months. I mean, when you add up he has to do that stuff where they do the semifinals. It takes a month. They go around and they do the auditions, and then there's really like a month or a month and a half where they're actually doing it live, because the first half of the season is showing the semifinals.
As a fan of Aerosmith, when I first found out Steven Tyler was going to be on American Idol, I thought the brand, because it is a brand, Aerosmith, and one of the greatest logos ever. I mean, it's like, it should be a cattle prod. It's too good. My first thing was like, oh, this is kind of going to be weird for Aerosmith.
Hey, man.
Or did it just make everything go up because of the visibility of being on primetime television?
I think it kind of even. Everything came out even. I think that there was certainly people that more people knew Steven's name, knew the band's name, but it doesn't make them buy tickets.
That's it
doesn't make the song any better. Whatever song's coming out, it doesn't. All of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, he's on American Idol.
So that was
this song must
that
be
was
much
his Joe
better.
Perry project.
So it was right. So
that's his Joe Perry. That's his Red
He did it, and it was great. And then I don't know whatever happened. With the second year, and the third year. He was signed up for 3 years. He did 2, and it is what it is. But anyway, it was we were happy for him, and it just. I don't know. As far as the image of the band, I think, I don't think it was something he would have done back in the 70s, unless it was the money. But we didn't really need the money back then, and not that he needed the money now. But I really don't. We were too arrogant, too rebellious, too much. There was too much of the image that I don't think that he would have done it. It would, it would be like kind of going on. I don't know. There was too much of that "don't trust anyone over 30" vibe going on in the band to make it. But you know what? Second guessing Steven never happened.
Does he always prove to usually be right? Is that why, or
No,
it's a fool's errand to second guess?
No matter what, I think he's going to think it's probably going to be just the opposite. So,
really?
No matter what. It's just how it is.
Joe Perry, the book is Rocks, My Life In and Out of Aerosmith. By the way, way more photos than any other person's rock and roll autobiography, and all like really cool, old school. You as a child holding a guitar. A little handsome Joe Perry, a little young man Joe Perry.
Well,
all the way through. So I just want everybody to get this book, because out of all... Look, 2 years ago it was Keith's. I dug Keith's a lot. I thought that was cool. And since then, I'm like, well, where's the next one? Boom. Here it is. It's Joe Perry.
Thanks. I really appreciate that, because that was Keith's was definitely one of the ones that stood out, and I read a lot of them before I started with this one. And Keith's was definitely it really hit things on the mark.
I like the one story in Keith's is when him and Paul McCartney didn't know they were neighbors, and I think it was like Turks Caicos or something. They were on the beach, and they lived 4 houses down from each other, but they didn't know it. And then so Paul heard that Keith lived down the beach, so he just walked and kept looking into people's houses. And then when he found Keith's house, they just hooked up and they smoked a joint and they just started playing together. But it was the first time. Paul's a lefty, as you know.
Yeah.
Keith, and this blew my mind. Keith has never been able to sit across from somebody and look at their hands, but because Paul was a lefty, he was actually able to look direct ahead instead of sitting next to the guy and getting a damn stiff neck. That story made me so happy.
Well,
but yours,
things like that happen. You know what I mean?
I thought yours was Keith. I thought Keith speaks kind of Keith language, and he is a bit of a pirate. Yours is way more informative and a lot more linear as to how the guys came together. The fights within the band, the disintegration, the rebuilding, stuff like that. So just congrats. And I wrote a couple books, and I know what you're talking about. When your grandkids are going to read it. When you look on the inside flap, Joe, and it says Library of Congress, and you're like, wait, what? I barely got out of high school.
I know, there's a lot of stuff that goes with it, man.
It's crazy.
It's like definitely... I suppose if you're a writer and like a lot of that stuff is like... it's again like doing an album. There are a lot of things you look at and you see that it's registered here and all that, trademarked there, and so a lot of the stuff to me, it just it didn't really have the same impact. But certainly, when the first box came with the 4 books in it that were actually that book, which was only about 2 weeks before it went on sale, because you do it in pieces. You got to worry about the cover, you got to worry about the pictures, you got to worry about the edits. I mean, we edited it 5 times, I think. Just
how many stories had to
right.
get edited out because members of Aerosmith said, "No way are you putting that story in
Oh
your
no,
book?"
I didn't talk to the guys in the band at all about the book.
All right, so then the next question is, who was the first guy in the band to go, how could you put that in your book about me, dude?
No, I didn't get any of that
Really?
from anybody.
This is like the most functional family ever. Like, you guys are like the most functionable, not dysfunctional. Like, it just seems like you guys...
Well, I got the response that I kind of expected from everybody, just because I know the guy so well, and it just I really have to say, I mean, everybody just kind of followed with what I figured it would be. Of course, Tom didn't get back to me for a month. But Tom is...
Maybe he was auditioning for Led Zeppelin.
He read the book, and he just kind of forgot about texting me about it. But then when he finally did, he said it was really, really good, and thanks. He really liked the part about Frank Conley, our first manager, and because that was a really special time for all of us, and we really worked hard to nail that, and he had there was like one minor comment in there because Frank gave us those nicknames, and he had another nickname that was Stephen had come up with, and his Frank's name for him was called the Brain, and Stephen's name was Low Gear, which was, to me, more appropriate because I look at it like a real positive thing, because he's always been like the solid guy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He doesn't come up with like just answers to questions or whatever without giving it some thought, and like he was always like the most pragmatic of the and
he took it as an insult,
and really smart too. I'm not, that's the thing. I mean,
Yeah.
the Brain was a good name for him because he is really smart, but as far as like like having like just the low end torque to like keep the thing going
he didn't like his nickname.
Well, he wished I would have said the Brain instead of the Low Gear.
If that's the biggest, if that's the biggest battle after a tell-all,
I'll fix it in
of
the
35, 38
next
years
thing,
in Aerosmith, then you've done okay.
Yeah.
Last question, Joe Perry, at Joe Perry on Twitter, and let him know that you bought the book. Tweet a photo of you holding the book and send it to Joe Perry on Twitter. I'm sure that'd be a nice day for Joe Perry. Wakes up, looks at Twitter, goes, I haven't checked Twitter in 4 days. Boom. There's 800 people holding the Joe Perry book all over the world. You have a magic wand. You can put any band that's broken up back together. Which band do you pick?
The Jimi Hendrix Experience.
Have you ever been?
Yeah.
Electric Ladyland, baby. Let's get after it.
It would have to be a magic wand, that's for sure.
A long one. If it was Jimmy's, it was a long wand.
Yeah, but I'll
you
tell
catch
you,
my drift.
He's the Amadeus of this century, man. So,
that's your guy. That's your touchstone.
Just like that,
That's a great. You know what? Nobody could argue that. Jimi Hendrix Experience. Let's get them back together. We'll have to have a seance.
Yeah.
Maybe we could pull it off.
I'll be the first one there.
Joe Perry, rocks. My life in and out of Aerosmith. Really pleasure to meet you, man. Great, and just what a fan for so long.
Good talking to you, man.
I appreciate it, brother. Much love. This is More Stories. Joe Perry, thank you.
Sure.
Put your name on it.
Thank you.
With the holidays almost here, you don't have time to go to the post office. Traffic, parking, it's going to be packed with everyone mailing holiday gifts and packages. Do what I do. Stay at home with Stamps.com. Stamps.com, you can avoid all the hassle of going to the post office during the busy holiday season. Everything you would do with the post office, you can do right from your own desk using your own computer and your own printer. You can print official U.S. postage, too. Print postage for any letter or package the instant you need it. Then the mailman just picks it up. Easy, convenient. I use Stamps.com. You should, too. Right now, get this special offer when you use my last name, Mohr, M-O-H-R, no-risk trial. $110 bonus offer that includes a digital scale and up to $55 free postage. Don't wait. Go to Stamps.com before you do anything else. Click on the microphone at the top of the homepage and type in my last name, Mohr. Stamps.com. Enter Mohr.
Geico presents Fan Mail to a Pig.
Dear Maxwell, first off, hope you are well. And I am. Seems like all you do is promote Geico's web and app abilities. And while I really enjoyed your last commercial where you talked about how I could take a photo of my VIN number and add it to my account all via my Geico app, I've got to think it doesn't leave you much time for anything else. Do tell. Sincerely, Miranda Morgan. Well, Miranda, thank you for asking. And this Geico spokespig does have time to do other things. For instance, I do a lot of
VIN scanning to add a car. Just a tap away on the Geico app.
Put your name on it. Just put your name on it. That's all I say. Be a man or a woman. Put your name on it.
Well, I'd like to hear about it, potheads.
How the fuck you gonna know how to be great if you don't study greatness? Look at the game tape.
Donuts. If you want a battle, it's either that you will or you won't.
You know, you're not a bad-looking man, Mr. Gals.
But you are, Blanche. You are in that chair.
There's something wrong with us. Something very, very wrong with us.
Hey, man.
Yo, turn my headsets up. Joe Perry on the More Stories podcast.
Rolling heart surgery. And within 10 days, he was back on the drum throne, you know, feeling like he was 10 years younger. But he just was out there having a great time. And but that's the kind of drive that the band has. So
It's got to be, I mean, people go like, hey, we're like a family. But when you've been around and been together for like 30, 40, however many years Aerosmith has been together, it is your family. You're probably with the band more than you're actually with like your wife, Billy. Like your actual family, for a very good chunk of time, takes a back seat to your on-stage family.
Well, one thing that when I met Billy before I put Aerosmith back together with the other guys, I mean, we made a commitment that we weren't going to be apart. So I've actually been able to spend probably more time with my wife and with my kids than most average people get to do. I mean, a lot of people, they have the 9-to-5 job. You know, they get up early, the kids go to school, you know, you get home, you're tired, everybody watches TV or whatever, and then the next day, as far as we go, we raised our kids on the road. We brought a tutor with us, and so I've actually spent a lot more time with my kids. And on the off days, we'll go off and do and wherever we are, we'll try and see something that we've never seen before, whether it's the Grand Canyon or the biggest ball of twine. You name it, we've been there.
There is actually a biggest ball of twine to look at.
Well, there's a couple. But you know, we've been across the Everglades. We've the kids have been to Tokyo at least 6 or 7 times over their lives. And
how old are your kids?
Well, the youngest is 22, and he just graduated from BU. The oldest is 40, and he runs my food company. And
hold on
my
a second.
next youngest,
Joe Perry has a food company.
Yeah, it's called Joe Perry's Rock Your World, and we do table sauce and barbecue sauce, and then
Joe Perry, you're
Yeah.
talking about getting used to the weather here in beautiful Southern California.
Well,
What
I'm
are you
trying to. I mean, the first day I got here, when the book tour officially ended, there were a couple of nice hot days, you know, where you get 2 or 3 hours and the sun's blasting down and you get a little, you know, tan. But now along with the, it's actually making it easier to go in the studio. I've been in the studio for the last week or so. So I'm working on my studio tan, but it makes it a lot easier to get in the studio when the sun isn't, blaring down, because I just love being out in the sun. So,
and not a lot of sun at this time of year, like in Boston.
It's there, but you don't see it. I mean, there's clouds.
You're not going to get
crappy weather and stuff. But right about now, if all else being equal, I would probably be in Florida. But
Florida?
Even then, I mean, I guess they're getting some pretty cold weather down there.
It's cold all over.
Yeah.
But it's hot all over. If you read Rocks, the book by Joe Perry, My Life In and Out at Aerosmith, I wasn't able to read the whole thing, but when I was skimming through, I was like, I started making check marks on pages and like stories and things I wanted to ask you about. Fucking Steven Tyler auditioned for Led Zeppelin. I'm like, wait, what? Huh? Wait, there's like so much. Your band in particular, Aerosmith. There is so much. You want to talk about a band that took a dip, disintegrated, came back. Then when you guys came back, like getting rid of, switching out managers and all that stuff. The longevity of Aerosmith. Why? Not to ask like why, but seriously, out of all the bands that disintegrate and then they just say stay disintegrated, what is it about Aerosmith? Not only have you guys survived, but when you guys put songs out, there's never a dud. They are always great songs and they're always hits. It's like this magic potion you guys tapped into somehow after you disintegrated and came back like a phoenix rising from the ashes. It's you guys kind of can't lose. What is that? What do you? I mean, how do you quantify that?
I think a lot of it has to do with third youngest is he's his late 30s and he's a lawyer and he's married to a beautiful wife who's a lawyer. And they live in New York City, and they got a 2-year-old daughter, and so that makes me a grandfather. And then my 28-year-old son is a producer and an engineer, and he's got a song, 3 songs in a movie at Cannes right now, and he's been on there was that TV show, the one about the actors, the kids. I don't know. Anyway, they've been on. They've had some songs on some TV shows, and then and my youngest is a DJ, and he's into electric music and that kind of thing. But he wants to be he's into sound and electronic sound. So we'll see where that goes. But he just graduated from BU, so we'll see where that.
My grandfather used to tell me you can tell a lot about a man by his children, and for what you're telling me, Joe Perry, apparently you're a pretty fantastic man. You got all these successful kids, and now you got a grandkid running around. Well done, sir.
Well, thank you. And actually, I've heard the same thing, that you just want a window into a family. You watch how the kids behave, and so far I've been really fortunate. And the kids are great, and I have a lot to thank Billy for, because she's an amazing woman, and she's been right there to help with the kids, So
when Aerosmith breaks up, and you just said out of your mouth, you said when I put Aerosmith back together, were you the one that was the man? Were you the guy that picked up the phone and called everybody and said, like, we need to get this back together?
Well, I suppose it was kind of. I mean, I remember making phone calls to Steven, but over the 4 or 5 years that I left the band, we'd always been talking to him. It's always been an uphill fight for us. I mean, we didn't like so-called make it overnight. I mean, we worked really hard building the sound of the band, and then building a repertoire of songs that people wanted to hear, and. But our main thing was knowing we had to get on stage and entertain the audience live. I mean, that was how you did it back then. And I mean, there were other bands doing the same thing, and you just wanted to, leave the show knowing that you left an impression. And that's always been our thing right up till right now. I mean, it's like part of our what makes us tick. I mean, it's about getting on stage and playing live, and through all the ups and downs of like punk and disco and the diva era and the boy band era and all that stuff. I mean, it still boils down to playing live, and we love doing that. And sounds like a cliche, man, but I'll tell you, when the five of us get on stage, we leave all the other crap behind, whether it's a screaming argument or we just had a great time having a lot of laughs. We get on stage and it's just us in the audience, and that's it.
So essentially, the longevity of Aerosmith is the fact that when you go see an Aerosmith concert, you never leave that concert feeling like you got shortchanged. You feel the opposite. You got to destroy live.
We try to do. I try to leave everything I got on stage, and I'll tell you, the more we go on, every year that goes by, I feel like I got to give more at every show. I mean, and we dig down. You can tell all the guys. None of us phone it in. It's just. I don't know. I don't know when the next Aerosmith gig is going to be. I really don't. I mean, in the middle of this last tour, Joey had a medical thing, and he had to go in and have heart